This is Wingflex's A320 FCU Cube, which I'll be showcasing and also making some comparisons to the very similar Mini Cockpit Mini FCU. What makes these products similar is the fact that they're both scaled down to around 80% of the real-world FCU and also similar in price. Just note that the Mini FCU doesn't come with this EFIS, that is a separate product by Mini Cockpit, but it's a pain to disconnect them, so that's why they're together. Before I get started, I would like to be fully transparent and mention that I got both the Wingflex FCU Cube and the Mini FCU for free, and I actually earn a 10% commission on Mini FCU sales. Oh, and one last disclaimer, if you notice the display being very dim or flickering in some shots, that's just because of the way it's being recorded, and it looks completely fine in real life. Now let's start as usual with the box and check out what you get. So you obviously get the FCU, as well as some legs, screws, a screwdriver, and a USB Type-A to C. And last but not least, it comes with instructions to attach the legs and also upgrade firmware, which I always appreciate even if they can be found online. Initially, I didn't want to use the legs because I liked the way the Mini FCU would just slide under my monitor, however I soon realized that you kind of need to use the legs, but for a very good reason, which I'll cover in detail later. Connecting the legs was no big deal, and software-wise it was also straightforward to set up. You have to visit their website, install the bridge software, and just make sure it's running in the background as you play your simulator. It should work just like that. We'll also have a look at the aircraft that it's compatible with towards the end of the video. So now let's cover the different buttons and how they feel, simply based on my opinion, as I've never used a real Airbus FCU before. The knobs for selecting your speed, heading, and so on all feel a bit heavier than the Mini FCU, which I personally like. They also have a slightly deeper sound as you turn them. Another difference is that you can wiggle them around a little bit before actually turning, while the Mini FCU has no wiggle and just clicks right away. The feeling of pushing and pulling the knobs feels just like on the Mini FCU, and I've got no complaints there. The real differences lie in the buttons. All the buttons on the Mini FCU have little travel and have a tactile and loud click. On the other hand, the FCU Cube's buttons have different feelings depending on the one you push. The small circular black buttons, as well as the localizer, expedite, and approach buttons require a decently firm push and have a soft click, while the autopilot and auto throttle buttons are much easier to push and make a more high pitch but quiet click sound with quite a lot of travel. I wish I could tell you which is more realistic, but I have no way to tell. However, if you've used a real FCU Cube, it would be great if you could share your thoughts in the comments and let us know if the buttons all feel the same as on the Mini FCU, or if they feel different depending on the button you push. In my opinion though, I do prefer the feeling of the Wingflex FCU. Now maybe you remember how I said I couldn't use it without the legs? Here's the reason why. Just as on the real Airbus FCU, you have two knobs at the bottom to adjust both the backlighting strength as well as the brightness of the display, which is really cool, but it also means you can't lay it flat on your desk like the Mini FCU. The build quality is also similar, but at least from the exterior, I slightly prefer the FCU Cube as the front panel seems to fit a bit better, preventing light from leaking out like on the Mini FCU, which has some small gaps. Something I wasn't happy with the FCU Cube is some of the markings. Here you can see the arrows next to the vertical speed knob are not aligned and differ slightly in size, and also the font seems to be slightly off. Lastly, here's a list of compatibility. Unfortunately, at the time of making this video, it isn't compatible with the default AnyBuild's Airbus A330 and A321 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, but I'm guessing and hoping that they'll work on a compatibility update in the future. Also, if you want to completely customize its use, you can use it with SPAD.next and MobiFlight. I've only tried it myself using the TOLUS A319 on X-Plane 12, and I experienced a small bug that prevented me from raising the target altitude when I had increments of 1000 selected. Usually sometime into the flight it would resolve itself, but I'm hoping this will be resolved in a future firmware or bridge software update. The rest worked just fine. Overall, I actually slightly prefer the feel of using the Wingflex FCU Cube despite it being $70 cheaper. But I guess it also comes down to personal preference since I don't actually know which one feels more realistic. Now if you're still unsure what to get, I recommend you check out the review I made on the Mini FCU, but honestly, I think you'll be happy with either of the products as overall they're very similar and both great fun to use. If you found this video helpful, feel free to leave a like and maybe subscribe to the channel to see more similar content.